Hello, the awesome tutor, and today I'm looking at solving quadratic equations. Now, the first method is by factorizing. So here we have a quadratic equation, x squared minus 2x minus 15 is 0. You have many different notations, some of which may look like these, but they all mean the same thing. So to factorize, now we have to find the numbers in the brackets here. Factorization becomes more complicated if there's a coefficient of x squared that's greater than 1, like 2. Alright, but let's look at the simple version first. So we have to find the numbers in here that times together to give minus 15 and add together to give minus 2. So what are the factors of 15? We have plus or minus 1 and plus or minus 15, plus or minus 3, plus or minus 5. Which one of them gives a difference of 2? That's 3 and 5. Now what combination of positive and negatives gives you negative 2? It is positive 3, negative 5. The more practice you do with factorizing quadratics, the faster these numbers will come to you. Alright, let's just check. X squared minus 5x plus 3x, so yes, minus 15, yes. Alright, so that means that either x plus 3 equals 0 or x minus 5 is equal to 0. In that case, x would be minus 3 and x would be 5. And you have solved the quadratic equation. Okay, so when the coefficient of x is greater than 1, then things become complicated. But the best thing for you is if the coefficient is a prime number. That way, it can only be two possible combinations of x, which will give you that number. So 3 and 1 will give you 3. That's the only combination because it's a prime number. Now you have to work out the numbers in the brackets. So factors of 20 and see which one of them fit to give you 20, multiply together, and adding together to give you 7. But remember, the number here has to also be multiplied by 3. Okay? So, I'm just going to give you the answer. So it's 3x minus 5 multiplied by x plus 4. I cannot teach you it, it's a skill you have to practice. And so that would mean x is equal to 5/3 and x is equal to negative 4. Next method. Okay, so by far the easiest method is the quadratic formula. Okay, you need to memorize this formula, unless they give it to you in a formula sheet depending on which exam board you're taking. So this formula only works if the equation is ax squared plus bx plus c is 0. So let's use this equation, x squared minus 2x minus 15 is 0. So a is going to be 1, b is going to be negative 2, and c is going to be negative 15. You plug that into the equation, you get x is 5 and x is negative 3. Now I say it's the easiest method because if you're lucky, your calculator will have a function that does the quadratic formula for you. Okay, let me show you my calculator. Okay, so if you go to mode and then equation, and you see here you have quadratic and you have cubic, which is also very useful. So 3 for the quadratic, and then you just put in the values for a, b, and c. A for us was 1 and b was negative 2 and c was negative 15. Alright, and it will give you the values. X is 5, x is negative 3. Okay, but you also have to show you're working. So I would just write down the values you're going to use for a, b, and c, write down the quadratic formula, and then plug it into your calculator and just write down the answers it gives you. Okay, so if you don't show you're working, for some exam boards they might take away marks from you. So remember to at least give the values for a, b, and c and write the formula down. Next method. So this method is called completing the square. Now completing the square only works if you have the coefficient of x squared is 1. So I'm going to give you another equation that we're going to use instead, which has a coefficient greater than 1. And I'll show you how to solve that problem. So what you do is, you divide everything by 2, because that will make the coefficient 1. And that will give you this here, x squared minus 7 over 2 of x minus 2 is equal to 0. And here is the key part of completing this square. You take the x squared in x terms, and what you do to the x squared term is you just make it x. And for the x term, you divide its coefficient by 2. So minus 7 over 2 divided by 2 gives you negative 7 over 4. Then you put it in brackets and square it. Okay, but the thing is, this value here is not equal to this value here. Okay, you're gonna have an extra value here which will not make it equal to 0. You need to fix that, and I'll show you now how to do it. So if you do expand what you did here, you're gonna get x squared minus 7 over 2x, so this part is fine, equals that, but you have an extra value, positive 49 over 16. And if you have that extra value, it's not going to give you your first equation. It's not equal to 0. So what you have to do is you have to get rid of that extra value. How do we do that? You just take it away. You take it away. As simple as that. Okay? Then you just simplify it, and then you solve it like a normal equation. So move that to this side, and then you square root both sides to give you x minus 7 over 4 is equal to the square root of 81 over 16. But it's the positive or negative square root of 81 over 16. Because, let me give you an example. You have negative 2 and you have positive 2. You square both of them, they're going to give you the same value, 4. Because a negative times a negative is a positive, and a positive times a positive is a positive. So if you find the square root of 4, you're either going to get negative 2 or 2. So plus or minus the square root of whatever you have inside it. Okay, and that's going to give you your two values for x. So x is equal to the positive or negative square root of 81 over 16 plus 7 over 4. So you do it once with the positive, then you do it once with the negative, and they will give you your two answers for x, which are x is equal to 4 and x is equal to negative a half. Now for the final method. Okay, now the graphing method is very simple, very rudimentary, and takes a lot of time, so I would not recommend it. But I'm going to show you it anyway, just so you can have an understanding. So we're going to use the equation, again, y is equal to x squared minus 2x minus 15. So what you do is you use a range of x values, so let's say from negative 5 to positive 5, and put each of those values into the equation and see what y value you get. So it will be, okay, so we have these values, and as you can see, it is symmetrical from this point and this point. So once you've reached a point where it starts to become symmetrical, just use the left values and put them into the right. So what you do is you plot all these points, alright, you sketch your graph. Okay, it's a parabola, and you see where it meets the x-axis. So remember, when we're solving quadratic equations, we're seeing where the curve meets the x-axis. And where it meets the x-axis is when y is going to be 0. That's why we have the notation x squared minus 2x minus 15 is equal to 0. We solve for the values of x when y is 0. Okay? As you can see here, the values are minus 3 and 5. So x is equal to negative 3 and x is equal to positive 5. That's it. This has been the Awesome Tutor. Bye.